Chương trình này được bảo trợ bởi
Family Joy, tổ ấm y tế của mọi gia đình, 714 898 0765.
Hi, welcome back to the OC Health and Education Show. Today we're going to continue our conversation with Connie Thomas, who is a marriage and family counselor, to talk about the importance of mental health and also to remind you that there is a hotline that's a 988 number for mental health, substance abuse that you can call or you can text. Sometimes it's really hard for us to pick up that phone, but sometimes texting may make it seem more accessible. Hôm nay Julie có thời gian nói chuyện với Connie Thomas. Connie Thomas là licensed and marriage family therapist. Hôm nay Julie muốn nhắc mạnh với quý vị đó có một cái số điện thoại là 988. Chương trình hôm nay muốn làm sao để cho mình giúp cho quý vị, để cho mình biết có cái số đây để mình liên lạc lúc mà mình căng thẳng, mình muốn gọi, bắt điện thoại gọi, nói tiếng Anh hay mình muốn text cũng được. Có người sẵn sàng hướng dẫn giúp cho mình. Today we're talking about the importance of mental health and accessing services, and you shared with us the importance of calling 988.
Absolutely.
988 is a number that we can call because, as we mentioned during the commercial break, that, there's so many books out there and so many families that are struggling. And especially in the Asian community, mental health is something that we kind of overlook. And we mask it different ways. We mask it through working too much. We mask it through having all these parties. We mask it through even doing plastic surgery. And there's so many ways that we as a community mask our real problem. How can we convince somebody, Connie, to tell their story?
Well, as we talked about before, the book, What My Bones Know, and I just forgot the name of the author again. Stephanie Fu.
Yes.
She's a journalist, and she's written her story of her experience growing up in the Bay Area and how she struggled even being able to be heard about her experience growing up in, as a child and being neglected and at times abused and the consequences of the expectations of a child in, being, quote, the model minority, excelling in school and excelling in life. And there's so many expectations that even here in Orange County, the disparity and disproportionality in numbers of children that seek care and mental health in the community. Like you said, the stigma around seeking mental health is much less than it has been in years.
Yes.
I would say my population and my clients, which I do have a full client load right now, which is about 27 clients, and 10% of, probably 20% of them are Asian. And obviously, I wouldn't necessarily be the person that you would expect to, but several of them are long-term clients.
Okay.
And we've worked really well together, and, we've learned from each other. I've made mistakes, but I'm always open to people challenging my assumptions. So, but I do think being able to listen, as clinicians, it's only been in the last 5-10 years that clinicians, you've seen a greater number of clinicians of Asian ancestry in the community. I have a colleague in Costa Mesa that her whole practice is Asian clinicians.
Yes.
And she's amazing. So they are out there. So if people are more comfortable with someone that looks like them, and has experiences similar to theirs, which most of us understand, obviously. And I always ask clients that question because,
I mean, picking the right therapist is very important.
Yes.
And a person that you can trust and that you feel heard. I think that's what you were reminding us, that in order to find the right therapist, it's not necessarily always the color of your skin or the cultural experience you have. But I think the patient that picked you feel that you're a good listener, and that they can trust you, and that your guidance is very meaningful and probably well intended and objective. I think that's a difference between going to a therapist and going to a friend.
Right.
Going to a friend, they have a lot of personal connection, and sometimes, you know, it may be biased. But I would like to think that those of us who are in the field, we stay very objective. We look at the situation, and we listen first before we make some guidance. So I think that's important for us to remind our audience that
absolutely
finding the right therapist, whether the gender of the therapist is important to them, the nationality, the language in which they speak, their cultural competency or familiarity. I think that's very important, Connie.
Religion may often be important.
And also religion, because there's so many checklists that they have to go through to find the right. It took me a long time, Connie, to find the right therapist. You know, because
I'm right there.
I needed a therapist who really understood my high functioning autism. You know, I'm high verbal, so a lot of therapists wouldn't treat my autism. They want to treat my anxiety, they want to treat my depression, because I'm so social, they don't think I have a social problem. But I think when I found Dr. Solomon, the first thing he said was, it's obvious that I had autism. That was the most pivotal point of my mental health recovery, where someone listened to me, acknowledged what I already know because I've been in the field for so many years,
right?
But it gave me the grace to myself. That I didn't have to go to every function that I was invited to, because my body couldn't handle the social anxiety. If I didn't ingest a social anxiety, it becomes depression. It becomes something more severe to be psychosomatic. I wouldn't be eating for 2 weeks, you know. So those kind of things, I think that's really important. So I thank you, Connie, for reminding us that, you know, let's pick the right therapist. Let's find the right person. And, you know, you got to try. If you don't try and you don't take that first appointment, you don't have the second and third, fourth different experience. So thank you, Connie, for reminding us, you know, to take our time, but also to have more grace for ourselves and each other. Thưa quý vị, hôm nay Julie nói chuyện với Connie là mình muốn nhắc nhở quý vị, lúc mà quý vị có căng thẳng, mình tìm cái bác sĩ về specialize in mental health, về sức khỏe tâm thần của mình phải nên thấy là mình thấy quan trọng cho cái gì. Giống như mình cần cái người nữ hơn người nam nói chuyện, hoặc cái người nào có giống như cái religion của mình cũng quan trọng. Tùy theo mỗi người có cái checklist nó khác. Thì Julie thấy đó, mình phải suy nghĩ, mình thấy mình cần cái gì, mình phải chọn cái bác sĩ nó phù hợp với mình. Connie nói đó là chừng nào quý vị có căng thẳng thì mình cũng phải nên có bạn bè, phải có cái người giúp đỡ thêm. Mà chừng nào mình phải chọn cái người mà tin tưởng mình, lắng tai nghe với mình, lúc đó mình mới thấy mình có cái khỏe, mình có khỏe hơn. You know, Connie, I think, like I mentioned to you, that finding a person who you feel that lends you the ear, I think that's important, and to be heard. I love that your company is called It's Your Story. You mentioned briefly that culturally, especially in the Asian community, sometimes we don't have that individualism, that we don't have a story, or we don't feel like we can tell our story, because our identity is rooted in our family's reputation. And it kind of goes together, and I think growing up I had a separation difficulty, thinking that I got to do this for my family. But I think as my mental health got better, I became more of an individual, remembering what I actually like to do, the kind of environment I thrive in, the kind of environment I recharge in. I want to ask you, because I think this is what I struggle as a therapist. When you have patients, you absorb so many people's pain and energy and stories. How do you kind of detox? How do you separate yourself, and how do you recharge?
So I grew up in a really large family, for the most part, with several siblings. I recharge a couple different ways. Most of my friends are therapists or social workers. So I go back to I spend time with friends. But
we're not talking about work, right? We're talking about just socialization?
Socialization.
Okay.
Like dinner, music, dancing, just getting away. But I also spend time with friends that aren't in the human services field, that just aren't one of us.
Yes.
Because we're fixers. If have relationship issues, they want to make a list of the pros and cons, right? And you're like, I don't make lists. That's not how I run my life. But I also love spending time with my sons and my grandkids. My grandsons they're
so
like,
recharge by reconnecting with the family.
Yes.
And moving yourself away from work sometimes.
Yes.
Well, thank you.
And I'm an introvert, so I tend to need a certain amount of time every day just by myself, whether it's, you know, sitting at the beach or just somewhere really nice to just
Connie, I
breathe.
appreciate all your advice. After the commercial break, we'll definitely talk more about all the great things we can do to recharge. Cảm ơn quý vị khán giả của Little Saigon TV. Sau quảng cáo, chúng tôi sẽ nói chuyện với Connie Thomas, Marriage and Family Counseling of It's Your Story.